Beware of false humility, it is the most subtle form of pride. Friedrich Nietzsche. We are taught to admire humility, to step back, to be modest, to never put ourselves above others. But what if humility, when taken too far, becomes something darker? What if constantly erasing yourself is just another mask, hiding fear, insecurity, or even a deeper hunger for control? This is the paradox of the self-effacing personality. On the surface, gentle, humble, modest. But beneath? A battlefield of psychology and philosophy that shapes relationships, careers, and destinies. So the question is, when you erase yourself for others, are you being virtuous? Or are you slowly destroying who you really are? There is a strange kind of power in disappearing. Not the disappearance of vanishing from the world entirely, but a quieter vanishing, the habit of stepping back when others step forward, of lowering your voice when your heart wants to speak, of covering your brilliance in a cloak of modesty so no one sees the light flickering inside you. At first glance, this looks noble. We call it humility. We admire those who refuse to boast, who shy away from recognition, who never demand the spotlight. But if you look closer, humility often disguises something far more haunting, a silent war between the self that longs to exist and the self that fears to be seen. Nietzsche once warned against what he called slave morality. He meant that when people cannot rise to power, they invent a morality that praises weakness as virtue. They call submission holy, meekness sacred, humility divine. In this moral reversal, the powerless are not just weak, they claim that weakness itself is superior to strength. And so the man who is unable to stand tall convinces himself that bowing low makes him morally pure. The woman who hides her talents pretends that invisibility is the highest form of goodness. What begins as modesty curdles into disappearance, into the denial of one's very being. In psychology, Freud spoke of defense mechanisms, the tricks the unconscious mind uses to protect itself from pain. Self-effacement is one such trick. To avoid the terror of rejection, the ego convinces itself, if I never show my worth, no one will have the chance to tear it down. If I make myself small, no one can strike me down. It is the strategy of the hedgehog curling into a ball, spikes out, heart hidden. Safe from attack, yes, but also trapped, motionless, frozen. And this strategy plays out in the quiet moments of life. Think of the worker who delivers the project that saves the company, but when praised, he says, "Oh, it was nothing. Anyone could have done it." Think of the friend who organizes the entire gathering, makes sure everyone is fed, cared for, entertained, but when thanked, she shrugs and whispers, "It wasn't me, it was all of you." These are not simply acts of kindness. They are erasures. With each dismissal of recognition, a piece of the self is rubbed out, until the person who once existed is little more than a shadow lingering in the background. It seems gentle, even beautiful, the way a person can dissolve themselves for the sake of others. But behind this softness is a silent cruelty, a cruelty turned inward. By refusing to acknowledge one's own worth, one builds a prison of invisibility. You are no longer attacked by the world, but neither are you ever truly seen, desired, or remembered. Symbolically, it is like a mask of modesty that fuses to the skin. At first you wear it willingly, thinking it makes you virtuous. But as time passes, you forget what lies beneath. You smile shyly, bow your head, laugh away your talent, and the mask grows tighter, until even you begin to believe that there is nothing of value underneath. And so the self-effacing personality walks through life as if dragging chains of silence. Others may admire the modesty, may even praise it as virtue, but the cost is profound. To disappear for others is not always to love them. Sometimes, it is simply to fear yourself. Carl Jung warned us that what we push down into the depths of our psyche does not disappear. It waits. It gathers strength in the darkness. He called it the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge, the instincts and desires we exile because they seem dangerous, selfish, or unworthy. And when someone lives their life in constant self-effacement, always bowing, always erasing, always lowering themselves before others, what they are really doing is feeding their shadow in secret. On the surface, they are saints of modesty. But underneath, a storm grows. Every time a person dismisses their achievement with a nervous laugh, a fragment of ambition falls into the shadow. Every time they silence themselves to avoid outshining a friend, a spark of pride is buried alive. Every time they deny their own needs to keep peace, an ember of resentment is locked away in the dark. And those embers do not go out. They smolder. They spread. They wait for the moment when the mask of humility slips, and the shadow rises with a vengeance. You have seen it before. The quiet colleague who never complains, who always agrees, who never takes credit. Until one day, without warning, they explode in a meeting, their voice trembling with rage, shocking everyone. Or the partner who constantly downplays their desires, "It's fine, whatever you want," until years later they suddenly walk away, leaving behind confusion and bitterness. These eruptions feel sudden, but they are not. They are the shadow claiming what it was denied. There is something tragic about this. The person who spent years making themselves small does not notice that their shadow is growing large behind them, taller, darker, more powerful with every sacrifice. Like a man bowing lower and lower, thinking this posture will keep him safe, while his own shadow stretches across the floor, towering above everyone else in the room. In his effort to erase himself, he has created a double more terrifying than the self he tried to hide. Psychology tells us that repression breeds distortion. What you deny becomes twisted. Innocent ambition becomes envy. Simple pride turns into arrogance. Gentle desire hardens into bitterness. By refusing to own these natural parts of the self-effacing personality forces them underground, where they mutate into darker forms. The shadow does not vanish simply because you choose silence. It learns to speak in other voices: anger, jealousy, passive aggression, self-destruction. And yet, the world often applauds the self-effacing person. We call them humble, easygoing, agreeable. We never notice the cracks forming beneath the surface, the quiet despair building inside them. It is as if society itself conspires to help bury their shadow, clapping for their disappearance, never realizing that they are fueling a volcano that will one day erupt. There is a haunting irony here. The very person who most fears being seen, who lowers their eyes and whispers, "I am nothing," is the one who eventually bursts forth in a way that terrifies everyone around them. The shadow they tried to deny becomes louder than they ever were. And this is the danger Jung spoke of, that the self we repress does not die. It waits in silence, until it is strong enough to break through the mask of modesty and take control. Power does not always arrive in the form of strength. Sometimes it hides itself in weakness, bending the battlefield until the strong are bound by invisible chains. Robert Greene wrote that people often wield their own helplessness as a weapon, forcing others to act, to rescue, to protect. And the self-effacing personality, though appearing harmless, can become a master of this subtle form of power. By constantly lowering themselves, they create a vacuum, and others rush in to fill it. In their fragility, they gain control. Imagine a person who repeats, "I am nothing without you." On the surface, it sounds like love, devotion, humility. But beneath those words is a quiet command: "You are responsible for me. If you leave, I will collapse. If you fail me, I will shatter." It is a chain disguised as affection. And the partner, unable to bear the guilt of letting them fall, stays. The weakness becomes a prison, not for the self-effacing one, but for the one who loves them. What appears soft and gentle transforms into a form of domination. In psychology, this is called covert control. It does not strike directly, but manipulates through guilt, dependency, and subtle emotional pressure. A child who always says, "I can't do this without you, Mom," learns that helplessness keeps the parent close. A colleague who constantly belittles themselves forces others to reassure them, to carry their weight, to constantly lift them back up. The performance of weakness becomes a lever, moving others without ever lifting a finger. Symbolically, it is the chess pawn. Small, seemingly powerless, overlooked by kings and queens. But its very fragility demands protection. Other pieces bend around it, shield it, sacrifice for it. And yet, this pawn has a hidden truth. When it reaches the other side of the board, it transforms into a queen, the most powerful piece of all. The pawn's weakness was never weakness, it was potential, waiting for others to clear the path. There is a darkness in this strategy, because it corrodes both sides. The self-effacing person begins to confuse invisibility with influence, silence with strength. They tell themselves, if I stay small, I will never be abandoned. But inside, they are manipulating love, twisting care into obligation. And those who stand around them, constantly lifting, constantly protecting, eventually feel drained, even resentful, trapped in a cycle where leaving feels cruel, but staying feels suffocating. This paradox is what makes the psychology of self-effacement so unsettling. At first, it seems like a refusal of power, a total rejection of ego. But in practice, it often becomes a way of holding others hostage with guilt. By saying, I am nothing, the self-effacing person silently demands, then make me something. Give me worth. Prove I exist. And the people around them, unwilling to watch someone crumble, obey. It is not a power of presence, but of absence. Not the authority of a loud voice, but the pressure of silence. Not the sword raised in battle, but the chain quietly laid across another's heart. This is the strange, haunting psychology of weakness as power, the ability to rule without ruling, to command without words, to dominate by erasing oneself so completely that others are forced to keep them alive. Throughout history, entire civilizations have praised the art of disappearing. Ancient religions exalted the monk who renounced the world, the nun who silenced her desires, the saint who denied his own body. To erase the self was to become holy. The less you claimed for yourself, the closer you were to God. And even in modern times, this legacy remains. Society still rewards those who make themselves small, who bow their heads, who serve without recognition. The self-effacing personality is not only tolerated, it is celebrated. But beneath that celebration lies a darker cultural trap. The candle that burns itself down to give light is admired by everyone in the room. They call it beautiful, noble, even divine. But the candle itself does not celebrate, it withers in silence, its body disappearing, its flame consumed. This is the hidden fate of those who are told that self-denial is virtue. They shine for others while hollowing themselves out, until nothing remains but wax and smoke. In psychology, collectivist cultures often teach that the group is everything, the individual nothing. To stand out is arrogance, to assert oneself is selfishness. Children grow up hearing, don't brag, don't talk too much, don't think you're special. And so they learn the art of self-effacement, mistaking it for goodness. They believe that to erase themselves is to protect harmony. But harmony bought with silence is only another form of repression. Even in the modern West, where individualism is celebrated on the surface, self-effacement still hides in plain sight. On social media, people perform modesty. I don't deserve this, I'm just lucky, I'm nothing compared to others. This humility wins admiration, likes, validation. Yet the paradox is cruel. The same platforms secretly reward confidence, dominance, even arrogance. The loudest voices are amplified, the boldest are remembered. Those who shrink into shadows may gain brief approval, but they are forgotten quickly, drowned in the noise of those who dare to claim their worth. And so the self-effacing personality becomes trapped between two worlds. In one, their silence is praised. In the other, it ensures their erasure. They are torn between cultural applause for their modesty and the cold reality that invisibility has no power. They sacrifice themselves to fit the ideal image, but the reward is only temporary. Like martyrs of their own psychology, they bleed quietly, hoping the world notices their sacrifice, even as the world turns its gaze to the louder, the prouder, the unashamed. There is a haunting irony in this cycle. The society that praises humility is the same society that exploits it. Workplaces admire the team player who never asks for credit, but it is the bold who are promoted. Families praise the child who never causes conflict, but it is the outspoken who shape the family's future. Communities exalt the member who sacrifices everything, but it is the ambitious who rise to lead. Humility is preached, but pride is rewarded. And the self-effacing personality, caught in this contradiction, learns to disappear more and more, while secretly resenting the world for never seeing them. Symbolically, it is the image of a stage filled with actors, each vying for attention. One actor steps back, lowers their voice, refuses to compete. The audience applauds their modesty, but when the play ends, no one remembers their role. They are the shadow in the corner, the ghost of a performance that could have been. And yet, they are told, this is virtue. This is goodness. This is how you should be. The cultural trap of self-effacement is not simply personal, it is systemic, woven into centuries of belief, tradition, and social expectation. It whispers to millions of people every day, disappear, and you will be loved. Erase yourself, and you will be remembered. But what it never admits is the cruel truth. Those who vanish for others often vanish from themselves first, and then from history entirely. There comes a moment when a person who has spent years erasing themselves finally looks into the mirror and realizes they are staring at a ghost. Their achievements have been minimized, their voice silenced, their desires buried. They have worn the mask of modesty so long that they no longer remember the contours of their real face. And yet, deep inside, something stirs, a quiet rebellion, a whisper that says, enough. It is here, in this fragile awakening, that the struggle to reclaim the self begins. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the hidden self with the visible one, the uniting of shadow and light. For the self-effacing personality, this means learning to embrace ambition without shame, to accept pride without arrogance, to hold both humility and worth in the same hand. It is not about becoming loud or boastful, but about refusing to vanish. To stand in the world as a whole being, neither inflated nor diminished. The journey is perilous, because it demands facing the very parts of oneself that were buried for years. The self-effacing person must look directly at their shadow, the pride they denied, the anger they repressed, the longing they silenced. They must admit, I wanted recognition. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to matter. These confessions feel dangerous, even sinful, after a lifetime of believing that self-denial was virtue. But without them, the prison of invisibility can never be broken. The Stoics once said that true humility is not pretending to be nothing, but understanding your place in the vast order of existence. You are not the center of the universe, but neither are you meaningless. You are a part of the cosmic whole, with a role only you can play. For the self-effacing personality, this perspective offers a way out, to see that acknowledging your worth is not arrogance, it is responsibility. To hide your light is not modesty, it is neglect of the gift you were given. In modern psychology, this balance is described as healthy self-esteem. It is the quiet strength of someone who can say, yes, I did this, and it matters, without needing applause, but also without shrinking into silence. It is the ability to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, to claim space without crushing others. It is the rediscovery of a voice that was buried beneath years of whispers. Picture a person slowly peeling away a mask they once believed was their skin. As the mask falls, the world expects them to roar, to demand, to dominate. But instead, they simply breathe. They speak in their real voice, not louder, not softer, but true. The power of authenticity is not in its volume, but in its honesty. It is the ability to stand in the open without flinching, to no longer apologize for existing. The reclamation of the self is not about abandoning humility, it is about purifying it. To be humble is to know your limits, but to also honor your strengths. To bow before the immensity of life, but to also stand upright within it. The self-effacing personality must learn that real modesty is not disappearing. It is showing up fully, without disguise, without the constant urge to shrink. And so the journey becomes an act of quiet defiance. After years of being a candle that burned itself down for others, the person chooses to become a flame that endures. After years of playing the ghost in the background, they step forward, not to steal the stage, but to finally claim their rightful place on it. To reclaim the self is not arrogance, it is survival. It is the simple, radical act of existing unapologetically in a world that once demanded your disappearance. He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. The self-effacing personality appears harmless, even noble. But behind every act of self-erasure lies a hidden truth: you cannot serve others by destroying yourself. Real humility is not disappearing into shadows, it is standing in the light, without fear, without arrogance, fully human. So ask yourself, are you truly humble? Or are you just afraid of being seen?